today. Minister, can you get into more details about how the international student cap works? How were the provincial allocations determined, and who is responsible for deciding if international students are issued a study permit by IRCC?
Go ahead, please.
It's important to take a step back and looking at this cap to look at what my statutory abilities are, authorities are. I can only cap the applications and not the actual issuance of visas. So the way it works through the math is that we assume a level of acceptance and rejection at our level, and it churns out a bunch of visas. So what we did is cap the intake at a certain level, and then we distributed it generally by population across Canada. That has resulted in some provinces, Alberta, Quebec, and others, being able to potentially go up by 10%. We don't want unbridled growth, so we've put some limits there. It'll result in some provinces having to reduce in certain categories, particularly at the trade, these business degrees that have varying levels of legitimacy, and the undergrad level by 10, 20, 30, 35, 40% at times. It depends. We are still in discussions with the provinces, but what it has done in a spirit of equity is spread out the access to visas by province, which is very important because there were some provinces that were doing better than others and some that just really needed to get their ships in order. The second measure was to eliminate the ability to get, for private public institutions to get postgraduate permits. Those are some of the ones that are the least regulated and subject to some of the most abuse. Hopefully that signs a bit of a death knell for those institutions. And the third was to limit the availability of spousal permits to those people doing masters and PhDs to attack a volume challenge, but also integrity challenges with what we believe was an area that was being exploited and not necessarily legitimate. So that was the spirit in which we did it. That was coupled with the measures that I took in the fall to increase the solvency requirements for people wanting to come to Canada. This is not the be-all and end-all. There is a lot of work. These are mostly quantitative steps. There are some qualitative steps that need to be taken by provinces in their own jurisdiction to make sure that the program can live up to what it was intended to be in the first place, which is to attract excellence and not volume, and not an attempt as attempts to get backdoor entries into Canada, or for certain institutions to triple, quadruple their fees simply because they are underfunded by provinces.
Thank you, Minister. Thank you so much. I was with you in Sheridan College when you first addressed this international student issue in Brampton. You came in as soon as you took over. It brought to your attention and you took action. Thank you so much for that. Minister, a few years ago, our government commissioned an economic report on the economic impact of international education in Canada. The resulting report indicated that in 2018, for example, international students in Canada spent $22.3 billion on tuition, accommodation, and discretionary spending, which translated into a $19.7 billion contribution to Canada's economy in that year. Ontario benefited from 55.3% of that contribution. The Economist estimated that international students annually spending in that year supported 218,577 jobs and contributed $3.7 billion in tax revenues. One of the other benefits to Canada is that international students support the hospitality sector by working in restaurants and hotels, for example. Is there a plan to compensate or counteract the loss of these contributions which might occur as a result of restricting the number of students?
15 seconds, Minister.
It's an exceedingly good question. It's hard to answer it in 15 seconds, Shefkat. We need to work with provinces to make sure that they are not chasing good money, chasing bad money for short-term gain and creating the long-term pain and impact that we've seen on our asylum system, or create a situation where people are undocumented here simply because we don't have the permanent residence space to accommodate them. The economic impact is significant. I think in in large, international students are a huge contribution to the economy, but there are some actors sitting on $100 million on their balance sheets in some colleges, and that doesn't make sense in a system where largely domestic tuition is capped. There is something wrong with that, and I think we need to fix that at the risk of leaving money on the table. So we'll have to work with provinces to make sure that the unintended consequences can be mitigated, but we need them to work with us.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ali and Mr. Minister.